Recording is on. So here we go.
Nice.
So Sahar, thanks so much for coming on. I believe this is episode 9 of the Healthcare Growth Cycle podcast. So you're still kind of in one of the initial guests for the start of this new podcast that I completely revamped starting in November. And the whole purpose of it's to get motivated, ambitious healthcare founders on who are changing the landscape of healthcare to talk about what it's like running, growing, scaling their healthcare, health tech, or biotech company. So it's really a big pleasure to have you on. And I did a little bit of background reading on you, but if you want to give the listeners maybe a little bit of a quick intro about who you are and what you do, I think that'd be really, really helpful to start off.
Yeah, definitely, Christian. So I'll start by thank you for inviting me because it's an honor to be here, and I always like to kind of share my journey with others, and if it helps someone or if they want to reach out afterwards, then I always like to help. So my name is Sahar Meiron. I live in Tel Aviv, Israel. I'm 33 years old. I'm an entrepreneur by heart, actually, for all of my life. As every Israeli, I finished my military service in 21. I was a commander and instructor in the counterterrorism unit in the camouflage division. I finished my military service, went straight into my work. I managed a youth movement of 250 kids. I always say this was like my first startup. Managing 250 kids from 8 to 18 is an insane thing to do. And if you get them to do what you want, adults are extremely easy.
So you're really patient.
Yeah, I'm extremely.
Yeah.
My team tells that about me all the time. Like I have a patient bar extremely high. So that was a very good first dip in that world. I've then flew to the state. I did my business and management internship over there in Florida. I came back to Israel. I studied biology in the Open University. Did some specialization in different courses around the world of drug discovery, development, and commercialization. And started my first initiative in the CBD for pet wellness world, actually. This was about 8 years ago. CBD was just started to, come up high. Everybody was talking about it as the magic cure. And I realized that at that point that, we're only talking about in the human level, but nobody talked about it for animals. And I found a gap. Started working there when a French veterinary company actually took over. I worked with them for about a year to establish the brand for that pet CBD wellness product. Was in charge of everything from operation to logistics and sales, and decided to leave the company after I understood that CBD is nice, but I felt that within the biomolecular conditions of cannabis, there are many, many more opportunities if you take them into medicinal products. So I left the veterinary company. I joined forces together with 2 co-founders. One is a leading veterinarian. The other is a drug development expert. And we sat down together to think about, the challenges and the needs within the space that we feel that we can solve. That led to a few months of brainstorming, which at that point, the veterinarian actually went on and said, I feel that, I've been researching bones as a research fellow. I've been treating them in pets as a surgeon, and I've been experiencing them as a patient. And with all of those kind of products for fracture healing, they're all oriented by hardware, meaning the metal, the implants, the pins, the nails. The orthopedic is basically a very good carpenter. So, but there is no real approved drug or a biologic drug that really accelerate healing of fracture and reduce complication rates. So he said, I think it's time to move away from the hardware and start looking at the software. And when he said software, he mentioned about the regulation of bone biology as a whole, and not in a very single-minded approach and dimension, but really understanding bone biology and trying to kind of look at the whole environment of bone biology and optimizing it within. So that was the task we went on to do. And it follows now. OrthoTreat is already 5.5 years since establishment. We've raised over $3 million. raising funds also from the Israel Innovation Authority and investors like the president of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and sport team owners, really to build something that would redefine orthopedic medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's briefly.
Wow. What's been like going through the funding rounds? And is it like have you gone through some U.S. based venture capital funding rounds versus Israel? Like walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's hectic. It's hectic.
Can only imagine.
Funding.
I've never done that.
Oh my God, funding is hectic. I don't recommend it to anyone unless you have a very good patient bar, as we mentioned. But it's like you need to scrape for whatever got right, and You need to do it smartly. So for us, when we founded the company, we initially invested our own money as much as we could to kind of create the initial proof of concept to show
Wow.
investors because biotech and medtech landscape is extremely hard, risky, and it takes a long time. So you need a patient, but you also need to show value and you need to show probability of success. So we went on to put our own money initially. We then designed a proof of concept that will show the value to those investors and that our approach is really right. Then we went on to bring in initial funding from different stakeholders like advisory boards, funders, and the rest. This put us on the map for about a year, which at that point we raised a seed round of $1.5 million. And that took us to a point where we were able to take that proof of concept, which was amazing. You have a great technology in hand, but to have a great technology in hand and a great product is a whole different story. So we
Sure.
went on to understand which product we're going to develop with that technology and start developing it. And that led to an additional funding round that will help us build our product towards an FDA submission for clinical studies in the US. Our investors, funding was never smooth. VCs in Israel are not very, I would say, pharma oriented. They are very high on medtech and e-health, but not biotech and pharma early stage. And I would say we're
Okay.
not the typical biotech company, right? So most biotech would spun out of universities, or they are a kind of derivative of something that was already known and then kind of refined to another place. And within our
Yeah.
case, we kind of recognize a problem and we set out to go and find the solution to it. And that was very different because now we are not backed up by 5 years of university knowledge, right? We need to establish the knowledge from the beginning when we based it on scientific literature and others. So for us, we really needed to find another way to get the funding. So it was initially those friends and families and founders and stakeholders. In the second layer, it went on to be orthopedic surgeons who see the value and believe in the product and understand the need. And the third layer was the type of investors that see the added value. So sport club owners, military organizations, insurance companies, and the ones that really know that if this product comes to life, they're going to benefit from both sides, basically.
Sure. So what's the core product? Because I see on your website there's a few different products that you have for different kinds of fractures. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, maybe if you just want to get into that a little bit, just for background.
yeah, definitely. So what we basically found out that when you combine two small chemical entities, specifically the one that we have, which is beta-caryophyllene and lovastatin, you're able to kind of regulate key factors, key pathways within the bone regeneration landscape. So when people talk about bone healing, usually they think about just how does the bone is being formatted, right? If you fracture a bone and then it needs to be rebuilt. But I don't think about all of the other factors that need to come into play for this process to be successful. So you have an inflammation process, you have an immune response factors, you have the different types of cells that build bone, but you have cells that break down bone. You have blood vessels that need to be reformatted because they've been completely ruptured with the fracture. So that's what we do. And we found out that by playing with those two compounds in a timely release sequence, we're able to modulate the inflammation and kind of move to another stage. We are able to shift the immune response into a pro-healing profile, stimulate the formation of blood vessels to drive nutrients, and also affect the cells that build and break down bone. So this is the core asset of the company, right? That's the technology. That's where we have our core IP on. But that's the technology, as I mentioned before. It's amazing, but that's not a product per se. So with that, we try to understand where within the bone regeneration market are we going to take this, because the bone or the orthopedic market is huge. It spans over trauma cases of bone fractures. It's aging with bone disorders like osteoporosis, elective surgeries like joint reconstructions and others. So there's so many, and I forgot even, implants, so prosthetics, dentals, etc. There's so many areas, right? So how are you going to choose which one to go first? So that's where our chief business officer comes into play, taking all of the market access and the key opinion leaders we work with to try to understand where does our biology and our technology could show the clinical and economical value the fastest possible in the least de-risk pathway. So after a lot of thought, we decided to go into long bone fractures that require surgery. Since this is a very huge population of fracture around the world, it occurs in mostly in functional populations, so people that are going into the workplace. And there's high rates of complications, so non-unions, delayed unions, revived surgeries, and all of types of those. So that's the first indication we decided to go to, and we needed to develop the right product for. So currently, all of the other products, which are not drugs, are considered like what we call bone fillers. So they aim to fill a void in order to create mechanical stability support. So we're not needed there, right? So we needed to think, where could we fit in the surgeon workflow, but not being a whole new product needed to be educated. So we developed a controlled release hydrogel, which is delivered directly to the site of the fracture during surgery. It is fully fully flowable. It comes in a pre-filled syringe, so the surgeon just get it, apply it to the site of the fracture. That's it. The gels releases over a period of three to 4 weeks. It works like what we said before. It optimizes the environment in terms of the key factors for it, and just disappear from the body. And hopefully you'd get faster healing with a safer product than what you have today, and better quality healing. And that's just the first product.
Wow. And is this in the US market and Israel market, or like?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So think of that. So we're building a global product. For us, it's redefining orthopedic medicine, right? We start with the US market. We go around to Europe, to the rest of the world. US is definitely the first market. It's the easiest access in terms of regulation on FDA side to get to the right market. We feel that, with recent changes in the US landscape in terms of value-based care, we fit right to it.
Sure. Yeah, and I know there's like a question about value-based care. How have you gone about customer acquisition? Do you go on site to orthopedic surgery practices and pitch, or like what's kind of the strategy there?
So keep in mind, we're not in the market yet, right? Because this is a product under development. But that being said, no, don't worry. But that being said, we speak with everybody, right? Because we need to fill the market today as we're building the product. So we're talking with surgeons, we're talking with payers, we're talking with hospitals, we're talking with everybody that could get us a sense about what they want to see, how we can bring value to them, and how we can tap into current reimbursement codes or build new ones to fit the what we're building, right? And
Sure.
for us also, I think that in the end, value-based care begins at product design. And if a therapy reduces complication and it fits the workflow, it aligns naturally to those bundle payments and risk models that are currently going in.
Sure. Sure. So this is a little bit out of my realm, but are you guys like applying for a clinical trial? Is that the goal right now at
Yeah.
this stage? Is that okay? Got it. Got it.
So
Um,
briefly, when you put a drug into the market, you have the discovery stage, you have the preclinical, then you file for an IND, which is an investigation drug application within the FDA. If you get it approved, it basically says, we recognize the safety of your drug to go into clinical studies. And there's different pathways down the road in terms of regulation, but you go and do your clinical studies in the US and you file for a new drug application. So right now, we're about to file the FDA for our IND submission to go into the clinics in the US.
wow. Congrats. I know that's like a huge milestone just from some of the directors of different labs around Columbus that I've talked to in the past. So that's huge.
Yeah, it's
Um,
been, yeah, yeah.
wow. So on the team building side, I mean, you've got quite the team. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you've gone about acquiring some of the talent that you have?
Yeah, sure. I think that, in people are the most important resource within the company, right? Not just in the company, but in general. But definitely when you build a startup, you usually don't have as much as resources as you would like in terms of capital and others. So people really become your most valuable resources. And I think that's something I always knew, working in different, managerial positions within the military or the youth movement or others. So for me, it was always about bringing people that I enjoy work with, have the right experience, and can help us build something really big here. So if it's bringing those business and market people early on to really look at the market from day one, or establishing a very supportive surrounding of advisory boards that encompass really those either key opinion leaders of orthopedics, experienced people within regulation and industry, the scientific layer, the data layer, the legal layer, and all of those, which I can, at every time point, pick up the phone, give them a call, and ask them, I have this and this thought or question. What do you think about that? And that's kind of an immediate access that I could have, which help us build something really unique. And you know what?
Yeah.
3 weeks ago, actually, we had a stakeholder gathering in Israel, and this was a first for us. So we had a few by before, but this was the first where our board members and advisors came from abroad, and investors as well. We held 2 days in Israel, and it was amazing. Honestly, to see so many people that are a part of this journey and this company,
Yeah.
all whether by investment of cash or their time, but not getting compensation in terms of payment, but still involved within this company. That means so much to me, and I see
Yeah.
this daily. The amount of grind that we bring into the table and what we do is just, it's awesome to be a part of.
Wow. What are the operational components of running like a preclinical trial biotech startup? Like what kind of reports are you looking at? What kind of data are you looking at right now? Is it mainly like research focused data, or do you have some operational metrics that you're looking at too for the health of your business?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. So there's so much, honestly. There are
Sure.
so much because from one hand you're dealing with, regulation and science and research and development, and as you mentioned, operational sides, the business,
Sure.
the market, the product. So it's kind of integrating many functionalities under one roof, like all companies does. In our case, it's really about building a very agile and dynamic program where we try to be as creative as possible to reach our milestones with the limited resources that we have, but preparing every day, preparing for three scenarios that comes along the way. So we're very try to be very aligned on that. But in that being said, we're very structured. So we work with Monday. We have our yearly timelines. We have our ongoing tasks, and we try to kind of follow on them. We also have our weekly meetings and weekly team meeting and weekly one-on-one meetings. And for me, I try to see that that my team has reasonable amount of tasks, not too much, not too little. And if they have too many on their plate, I try to see how could we help them kind of move this around and making sure that there's nothing sitting there for too long without getting any notice.
Sure.
Yeah, because yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really, really interesting. Um, yeah, I'm just so as far as maybe like do you do a lot of market research, I guess? Like is there a
Yeah.
marketing analysis component, or a market analysis, I should say, a component to
Yeah,
this?
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Because in the end, so a product to market for us is not just about the synchronization between biology and market need. There's so much to it which you need to be connected with
Yeah.
its the probability of success and the unmet and the clinical need and the market size and the different sensitivity models that need to come into play. So for
Yeah.
us, we work with different Excel models, NPV models
Okay.
that we collect multiple data points and we kind of create those assumptions libraries to help us navigate between prioritization of different indications and how would they be able to leverage other indications within our
Sure.
expansion platform.
Yeah.
So it's definitely working within those areas and kind of different models to try and quantify and qualitative
Yeah.
decision making.
Wow. Is there a lot of like looking at third party data like that's maybe de-identified and trying to understand patient cohorts for orthopedic
Yes,
patients, and where
yes,
your products
yeah.
would be the best fit? So then
Oh my God,
you're
yes,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And then how
Yeah,
does that play in? Like, yeah, just because I'm just used to maybe like health tech and telehealth where it's like SaaS based and you've got customers coming in CRM, but you're going through a clinical trial, like you don't. Is it correct to say that you don't have a customer until you get approved for a clinical trial and then it's being used? Is that correct, or is it
nah,
different? I'm
you
just
could you could
unaware
you
from bio.
you could even say that you don't have a client until you are getting FDA approval,
Right.
because
So in that
sometimes
time,
that's the case.
wow. And so in that time, you're doing all that market research to try to understand like what to pinpoint and
Yeah,
target for that
yes,
clinical
yeah.
trial. Then. So it really.
Yeah,
Oh
and
wow.
what would you and what your client want? Now, your client could
Yeah.
be, the patient, it could be the hospital, it could be the payer, the insurance guy, but it could also be the big medtech or pharma company which is going to
Sure.
acquire you or going to license that product. So you need to
Yeah.
kind of build those relationships
Wow.
since early on and see where it fits most and how you gonna collect all of those data, digest them within, and work around that.
Um. Because like I said, just being in SaaS, like I haven't worked with a biotech company that's preclinical trial, but there's still plenty of data. Um,
So many, and we also,
yeah,
one of the things that data is fascinating, and it's so important to have the tools within biotech as well. It's
yeah,
more of a traditional industry, but with current, tools and technologies coming into play, the ones that are not using this are missing
yeah.
out big. And for us, I think, I see it within, we work with AI, definitely. We harness it within our favor, whether it's
I was just
working
gonna
it
ask.
internally. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yep.
And we're also
No, it's
thinking
good.
about, for us, it's also about, from one end, how are we utilizing it today? And how could we build something in favor of the company that could serve us in the future as well?
Yeah. So essentially, right now, is the AI you're using like foundational models like Claude and ChatGPT to help you like augment analysis for something like market research, and then eventually would you be using your own proprietary AI models once you get more data through like a clinical trial to continue to better understand your drug and where it might work for other
Yeah.
patients? And this is just me ideating as an analyst, right? Like I
Yes,
don't know
yes,
for sure,
definitely.
but
No,
yeah,
you're nailing it, and even more, because yeah, really, right now we're using it to help us, challenge programs and protocols and
yeah,
analyze data in some terms and comparison in other products and clinical studies. But moving
yeah,
forward, when collecting the data and also, feeding the beast, we're able
yeah,
to kind of implement other features that would be able us to interpretate imaging, for example, and write regulatory papers and other stuff, maybe even identifying new assets for the
yeah.
company to explore.
Wow. And imaging could be what X-ray data of fractures and where,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
product
micro
might.
CT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, so to the value-based care, I know you kind of already brought it up, and I do want to touch on that. What has it been like finding product market fit with value-based care? Is that a part of clinical trials as well, or would that have to be a
Mm,
separate thing once it's like post clinical trial?
So
Or is it?
it's a part because you need to consider within your reimbursement strategy early on, what are you gonna show when you go into the market? And if you collected the right data in the clinical studies, that's gonna help you a lot down the road when you're gonna file for that application. So for example, for us with value-based care, there's a new program within CMS that called, I think it's NTEP, which is New Technologies Add-on Payments, which is basically sets down the bar for value-based care to gain 2 years assessments for their value-based new product. And if it stands within the criteria, you get a coding for reimbursement, which is a highly difficult thing to do, right? So you basically get like a 2 year grace where they're going to cover the payment, going to explore whether this is really cover under their, different types of characteristics. And if it
Yeah.
does, you're going to get the permanent coding. But the fact that they're willing to give you that 2 years would only be applicable if during the clinical studies you already showed the significance of your product in terms of
Wow.
basically health economic. Does it improve quality of life? Are you able to bring people back to their routine faster, reducing their loss of work days, reducing hospitalization days, reducing revision surgeries? That's where we aim to show in our clinical trials. And if we wouldn't think of that ahead of time, you might, a company just might want to show, all right, I'm going to show that I have accelerated healing time, but that's it. And that might not be sufficient enough.
Wow. Interesting. And sorry, that's the coding for the insurance companies when a patient were
Hmm.
to file, or the hospital
Yeah,
system on behalf of the patient would file a claim.
exactly.
That's
Because
that's
is
crazy.
that our aim is that you're gonna go to the hospital to get your fracture fixed. They're
Right.
not gonna even ask you if to use our product. It's gonna be mandatory because the payers want this to be mandatory because it actually saves them billions of dollars for loss of work days for their insured.
Yeah. Are you, and I think you mentioned like payers, are you working with payers to already like be prepared for like what does a approved claim look like?
Yeah,
Like what's the
yeah.
sufficient information so that you can be sure that when claims are submitted by health systems that ultimately after that 2 year trial your codes are going to be approved? I mean, I can only imagine what kind of challenge that presents, Sahar.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah. Pairs are not the. No, yeah. I'm gonna stop there, but yeah, you got
No,
it.
I know,
But
yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, definitely. It's difficult, but it's so important to build those relationship and understanding early on
Yes.
because it's the product won't be successful if it's not built the right way to the right market. So you need to
Yeah.
kind of understand all of those different semantics early on. I think it's extremely important. And then science will follow, regulation will follow.
Wow. Oh, that's great. So, what's the most difficult part about founding and scaling a biotechnology startup? Money.
Capital, yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Always, always the capital, because it's insane. You're trying to build something unique that
Yeah.
really change lives of patients, but sometimes it's just so hard to kind of find the right funding for you. So for me, cash availability, that was the most difficult things. But that being said, it kind of puts us in a place where we need to be creative and agile. And I like that. I like actually that place of,
Yeah.
thinking outside of the box. It brought us to where we are. We were 5 years, 3 millions. It's not a lot of money for 5 years, and the amount of things that we've done during that year, and that's because we've been pushed to the corner, I think.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I've just heard. So one of my friends works for a biotechnology startup here in Columbus. Although they're not really a startup anymore. They had an acquisition that was really
Nice.
large. But he always tells me he would love to found a biotechnology company one day, but the overhead and the capital required is so intensive.
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So,
insane, for let's say for a standard biotech company to bring a drug from discovery to approval, the average is $1 billion and 15-20 years. So for
yeah, it's a
us,
long game.
just it's a long game. But for us, just being said, because we've been thinking very differently since day one, and that comes into to play with the choice of compounds and the regulatory approach and everything. We're talking about 50 to 100 million. So that's a lot less than the generic drug development process.
Sure. Sure. Well, that's great. I guess what's the best part about scaling a biotech company? So we just talked about the most challenging piece, but what would you say is like the most rewarding or the best?
I think it's also, I always come back to that. It's also the people. When you scale up, you have more people to work with, and I just love working with people. We're just, um, we're now actually establishing our European headquarters. So the company is
Wow.
establishing its European headquarters, keeping Israel as an R&D center. That puts a lot of work internationally, going into the Netherlands, Israel, the rest of Europe. Every time I go, I have slots to just meet new people from the Netherlands ecosystems, and every meeting is just amazing. You just meet
Wow.
other people that just want to do something good for other people, and they
Yeah.
want to help, and they want to take involvement. And for
Yeah.
me, that's amazing. People wanting to take involvement, not gaining necessarily the material compensation.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I gave a little talk at a local event last night about the importance of human experiences in the age of AI.
Hmm.
And the beautiful
Yes.
thing with us being in healthcare is it's 1000% relationships at the
Hmm.
top. How are we actually
Yes.
impacting our patients positively? Um,
Yes.
so I just argue that like with founders like you, it keeping the relationship at the top and the patient outcomes in mind, leading your team towards positive patient outcomes, that's never going to be replaced by,
Yeah.
agents. And I wanted to just make that point last night that it's like how you really stay differentiated is by that leadership and that real authentic relationship that you build with your people and your clients, and you're doing that. So it's just something I just kind of wanted to soundboard to you and reiterate to my audience. But yeah,
Me-
that's great.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's so important to have that personal touch today, especially with AI taking even
Yeah,
stronger, percentage within our lives. But it's like the people factor, the human factor, is extremely important. That's where the real work get done. That's where the real decisions get done, and that's where we build something truly unique. And it has to be that way, and
yeah,
it won't go away. And for me, even the fact that I've been working my ass off for the past 5 years. It's 14 hours a day, weekends, it's all of that, but the people is like what drives me, because when I'm with them, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like we're actually just a bunch of people that having fun being together and having fun building something that would make a difference.
Wow. Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, I'm going to give you the floor for the last minute or two here. Where can people reach out, find you, learn a little bit more about OrthoTreat if you just want to kind of plug some of your socials and whatnot?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm very accessible over LinkedIn. Whether you can follow us on OrthoTreat page over there, or myself reach out with a connection request. I'm always up to grab a digital coffee or a physical one if we're around. I think that's the best place to reach out to me. I have my email. It's sahar@orthotreat.io. And just, yeah, wherever you are, just shout out. I'm here, and I'm always up for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Sahar. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 9 of the Healthcare Growth Cycle podcast. We will see you on the next episode.
Nice.